Hello. So today we're going to be doing the ACTMatrix second quadrant. There's a little departure from the way that the timeline of filming. The videos for quadrant 2, 3, and 4 were lost from the original filming. So I'm just re-recording them. So if there's continuity, it's because it's like a year later. But that doesn't necessarily take away from it. It might be able to add. I think it can be kind of cool. So we're going to be hopping in with the second quadrant, which is in this lower corner, right? Here. And so we're in the away from values or away from goals side, right? Because we're over there. And then we're also on the lower part, which is inside our thoughts, our feelings, ourself, rather than something that's observable, right? And the whole lower half, behavior analysts can kind of feel a little bit weird about. Usually we can take values at face value because it's societally decided upon sometimes, or like it's apparent from the human organism. But when we start thinking about the stuff that moves us away in the thoughts and feelings department, sometimes we get a little uncomfortable, for real. And that's okay. I think that there should be a willingness to be uncomfortable for some of this. So that way we can start thinking about what's functional and what's helpful rather than just perpetuating what we know, right? So there's some pillars of the hexaflex that I want to draw our attention to as to what this correlates, because I've mentioned a bunch of times, I like the hexaflex model better, but I want to show you this model because it's workable, right? Like you would start with what's important in this quadrant and then what thoughts and feelings are keeping you away from that quadrant. So let's point to the hexaflex while we do this. Acceptance, right? That these things exist and that they're taking us away is definitely a component here, right? That the process of the way that these thoughts and feelings are impacting us aren't moving us towards our goals. We gotta, I mean, there's a level of acceptance. I'm gonna sneeze. This is also going to point us in the direction of diffusion. Okay, so that's another hexaflex component, which if you're watching these, you've probably watched the hexaflex ones already because of the way that I usually organize these things, where we're going to notice that these thoughts, feelings are just thoughts and feelings. They don't necessarily have to be something that we take for face value. We can look at them and think at them, right? Observing them instead of from inside of them. Present moment awareness is usually something that we'll probably touch on, at least eventually, whether it be we're in a reflective moment and we're looking back, with the goal of eventually being able to see that we've got an action, we've got a thought or a feeling in the present moment that's moving us away, so that way we can move towards the committed action component, right? Self as context is needed for being able to do any of the stuff that I'm talking about, being able to observe the thoughts, the feelings, being able to sometimes like even just notice that the thought and the feeling is existing rather than we are it, right? So the idea of that we aren't the wave, we're the ocean. Whereas sometimes we look at it like we're the wave and we have to focus on this one wave rather than we're the whole ocean. We can hold all the waves. Or if you want to move to the sky, you can do clouds in the sky instead of we're the cloud, we're the whole sky. We can hold all the clouds. And then even values, like why would it be important to take a look at these things? So what are the things that we're talking about, right? A lot of the times these are going to, like some words that I might be able to point to that would mean things in this category are limiting beliefs. So like what I want can't happen. This is unreasonable. I've never seen something like that before, so I can't do it. People like me don't get that. That kind of stuff. Old mindsets, right? And the next one is self-identities. These two kind of go together. Like I'm blank, so therefore this thing can't happen. Or one that I use a lot is like a mom because I'm a mom. So like, what is a good mom, right? And how are my things outside of that self-identity that I've created, which is just a bunch of information tucked up underneath this word of mom. You could use BCBA, you could use partner, you could use whatever word you want. Just noticing that all of that is, there's components to that, right? Like a good mom, to follow that example, takes care of her kids. A good mom is selfless. A good mom sacrifices, right? A good mom is always kind, is always cheerful. All of those things are what I've kind of put together as a good mom, and I like lump them together in this like, but I rarely unpack the idea that all of those things that I just said all the time are unreasonable, right? And so having this old belief or this self-identity that if I want to be this means I can't experience these things, right? Then I'm gonna struggle. Even just the concept that those things are what I should experience versus what I am experiencing, right, are thoughts and feelings that are moving me away from my values because I experience them. And doesn't make me a bad mom because I have those experiences. Does that make sense? Also just psychological inflexibility, which the whole point of ACT is psychological flexibility, right? Like that's the center that we talk about later on. And the idea is to be able to fluidly move through the idea that these things exist, right? And then evaluate them for functionality. So when we gain more perspective, right, maybe what you could do is, because like the way that this grid is made is so that you could use it as a tool. You might write down what's important, what thoughts and feelings specifically to what's important are moving me away from those things, right? And you can write them down specifically what they are, right? So what perspectives aren't helping you here? What are the words that you're saying to yourself really specifically? Like, I can't do this. What are they? Put them in that column. What are you taking for granted as truth here? Because sometimes the absolute truth isn't necessarily what we're thinking, right? Like what I was just talking about with the good mom. It's not an absolute truth that all of those qualities that I listed are what make a good mom, right? Like there's a lot of ways to be a good mom. And so am I doing myself any favors by thinking I have to be happy all the time, or I have to be selfless all the time in order to be a good mom, when that's not actually what always matters to me? Does that make sense? Those thoughts aren't helping. And so that perspective isn't helping, and it's not the absolute truth. There are other truths out there. It's just hard to see it because I'm fused to those thoughts, right? And so this is a diffusion process, being able to see like these thoughts and feelings exist, even these bodily sensations, and they don't necessarily help me here. And even like a word that might be helpful for you to evaluate this is functional, right? Are these thoughts and feelings functional? Because they don't have to be true. The challenge is that a lot of the times we have the experience that our thoughts and feelings are absolute truth, which isn't true. And so when we defuse from the idea that because I'm feeling angry doesn't mean I have to be angry, I'm just feeling angry, right? I don't have to be anger. I don't have to fix anger. Fill in the blank for what's true for you here, right? This is just an example. But I'm having the feelings of that, right? We're diffusing from it. And what could be something that another person might feel in the situation, right? Like an outsider might look at something that I did, perceiving myself as being a bad mom and being like, wow, that was really cool there. She did a great job, right? That could be a perspective that exists, and that could be a perspective that exists that I can also choose to take. How can I look for examples of that too, right? That's moving up and around the matrix. These all flow into each other, right? Because the next one is going to be actions that move me away, and they get messy in between. This is just about using this kind of grid tool to be able to help gain clarity. That's the point of using the grid tool. So we wrote down in the first quadrant what matters. What is our goal? What is the thing that really matters here? That's roughly equivalent to values, right? Now we're moving over to the second one. What are the thoughts, feelings, beliefs that keep me from this thing that matters? I would just write those down in this quadrant because then we're going to work with them as we move around the quadrant. But hopefully this gave a little bit of insight as to how to work with this tool, how it relates to ACT, and why it would be important to try. So I'll see you in the next one. And I hope you have fun. Bye.